Good evening and welcome back once again to Channel 514. As you can see, I've added a mattress to the floor of the office here in order to sleep on it. The last week or so it's been relatively chilly, and so it's nice to be able to reach over to the space heater without getting up during the night. But anyway, we'll be continuing our series exploring ancient literature this evening. And we have just 2 or 3 videos, I think, left to go in order to round off our series on Egyptian literature. And the subject that I want to deal with in this video is Egyptian lyric poetry. And one thing that's interesting about this somewhat extensive corpus of poetry is that it provides a counterbalance to the literature of the mortuary cult. And so you could say that it's the flip side of Egyptian life. And what do I mean by that? Well, some videos back we talked about the literature of the mortuary cult and the classics of the Osirian religious tradition, and I said we have to give the pyramids and mummies their due, because what is one of the first things you think of when you think of ancient Egypt? Well, you think of pyramids and mummies. You might think of the Hollywood movies called The Mummy with Boris Karloff from back in the 20s or 30s or whenever that was, the Egyptomania period. Or you might think of Charles Taze Russell's tomb, which looks like a pyramid. Or you might think of the mummy movies from the late 90s and early 2000s. Or this horror movie that I just read about online yesterday that's coming out soon called The Pyramid, where these people, these archaeology students or whatever they are, they find a new, heretofore unknown pyramid in Egypt, and they go inside and they find themselves in a labyrinth where there's a monster that wants to eat them. Probably the monster eats most of them, but that actually struck me as interesting because you haven't seen one of these Egyptomania horror flicks in a long time, really. I think probably for quite a long time, and so it's almost a return to a classic trope in a sense. You could almost compare that, since there's a monster, to this story that H.P. Lovecraft ghost wrote. I believe he ghost wrote it for Harry Houdini because the main character is Harry Houdini. What is it called? Imprisoned with the Pharaohs or Entombed with the Pharaohs. I think it goes by more than one title, but it's something like that. But in any case, you've got all this stuff in popular culture, in Hollywood and pulp fiction. You've got all this Egyptomania stuff with pyramids and mummies. And that's not really totally unwarranted, or it's easy to see why that would have jumped out at the popular imagination. And even in Greek literature, in the histories of Herodotus, there's sort of a romantic tale about Egyptian tomb robbers and how they were tortured into revealing their secrets, or how one robber had to kill the other who was trapped so that he wouldn't be tortured by his captors later on. Maybe that story isn't original to Herodotus, and maybe it was originally about some tomb robbers somewhere other than Egypt, but in any case, you see where I'm going with this. All this stuff about pyramids and mummies, and it's not unwarranted because you have this great wealth of material culture to back it up, and also literature like the pyramid texts and the coffin texts and the so-called Book of the Dead, and what have you, the Osirian books for one thing. But also, there's a flip side to Egyptian life. So the mortuary cult and everything connected with it, yes, that's one of the more outstanding features of Egyptian life, but there's a flip side, and I use that slang term advisedly because the lyric poetry that we're going to talk about really does represent a view of life that's almost opposite. So the strongest example would be the tradition of Harper songs, and you may remember the first in our series of 10 studies is called Quality of Life and the Harper, and it revolves around a New Kingdom lyric poem known as the Song of the Harper, which is believed to have been the soundtrack, if you like, of the lavish banquets of the New Kingdom nobles. And this lyric poem, this song, the Song of the Harper, it presents a view that really directly opposes the mortuary cult. And so it sort of takes a skeptical or an agnostic view of grave goods and tombs and the books of the dead, etc., etc. And so it makes light of these things, really, or negates them. And we'll get to that, but I think I've said enough by way of a little preface for this video. So there are a lot of papyri that include lyric poetry from ancient Egypt, and the papyri have names by which they're called that scholars have attached to them, and most of them date to the New Kingdom. And so I'm just going to take a quick run through of those, or introduce them very briefly from our source text that we always use, The Literature of Ancient Egypt, from Yale University Press, 2003, edited by William Kelly Simpson. Where did I put that book? Here it is. This is the book. It's probably familiar by now to anyone who's watched a few of these videos, but let's flip to this section with the lyric poems. Here we are. So it says here, the songs were originally arranged in groups, the three major collections being found in Papyrus Harris 500, also known as British Museum 10060, also Papyrus Turin 1996, and Papyrus Chester Beatty 1, also known as British Museum 10681. A few additional texts are also known from various hieratic ostraka. Alfred Hermann has listed a total of 55 individual songs, plus a number of other fragments. Let's see. So again, these date from the New Kingdom. They were written in a version or a form of the Egyptian language known as Late Egyptian. And as I said, the three major collections are from Papyrus Harris 500, Papyrus Turin 1996, and Papyrus Chester Beatty 1. So they're grouped together in a lot of different groupings, and I don't think I'll read more than one, because I could select more or less at random and read a few of these, and it would take up some time, but I don't think we really need to do that to get the point. I'll select one completely at random, or one that I particularly enjoy, and we'll just read that. But in any case, here's my dog putting in an appearance. Hey. Say hi. Say hi, everybody. Okay, so what can I say about these poems, just to give a general idea of them? Well, most of them tend to be about flirtations and trysting and assignations, and so young lovers, etc. So some of them, the speaker is male, and in others the speaker is female. And in some, the ardent young lover, if it's a male, he's usually talking about how he's going to go meet with his beloved, or if it's a female speaker, a lot of the time she's talking about how she's waiting to meet with her beloved, or they're talking about the other person and what they like about them, etc. So that's not hard to imagine, but what else is there to say? Well, just as a miscellaneous thing that might be interesting to point out, there are some where the speaker is an ardent young man and he's talking about the door to his beloved's house or something like that, or the lock on the door, and how he wants the door or the lock on the door to be more cooperative with him and let him into the house or something like that. And you find that kind of thing in Ovid, and it's common in Roman lyric poetry also. And so here's a much earlier example of it in Egyptian lyric poetry. But in any case, a lot of these are really quite nice, but they're grouped together, as I said, into different groupings. One, the beginnings of the songs of pleasant entertainment for your beloved, the chosen of your heart when she comes from the fields. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 of those. A selection called the Songs of Entertainment, the Cairo love songs, the Turin love songs, or the Songs of the Orchard. I think we're going to read one of those, actually. Yeah, there's one here that I like that I think we'll read. The Poems of Great Delight, the Chester Beatty Cycle of 3 Songs, the Nacht Sobek songs from Papyrus Chester Beatty 1, also known as the beginning of the delightful verses found in a box of manuscripts written by the scribe Nacht Sobek of the Necropolis. So that would be the superscription to this series of songs, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And then you have the Song of the Harper. So let's just randomly read number 30 from this collection, and it's one of the Songs of the Orchard. It's a favorite of mine, so beginning. The little sycamore, which she planted with her own hand, sends forth its voice to speak, and the chatter which comes from its mouth is like a stream of honey. It is beautiful, and its boughs are lovely. It is verdant and flourishing, burdened down with notched figs, more crimson than red jasper. Its leaves are like turquoise, and their hue like faience. Its wood is like the tinge of feldspar, and its resin is like the bezbez draught. It attracts him who is not under it, for its shade is refreshing. It put a message in the hand of a little girl, the daughter of its orchard keeper, and caused her to hasten to the beloved. Come and spend a moment among the girls, for the countryside is at its best, and there is a kiosk and a pavilion beneath me. The gardeners will rejoice and revel like children when they see you. Have your servants sent on before you, equipped with their utensils, for I am drunk when hastening toward you, without even taking a drink. Give heed, have them come bearing their equipment, bringing every kind of beer, all sorts of bread in abundance, vegetables, strong drink of yesterday and today, and all kinds of fruit for enjoyment. Come and pass the day in happiness, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, even for 3 days, sitting beneath my shade. Her companion is on her right, and she causes him to become drunk while obeying what he says. The beer house is riotous with drunkenness all the while she is with her lover. Her secret is safe with me, the beloved one, in her adventures. I am discreet enough not to repeat what I have seen, and I shall not say even one word. So the speaker there you can see is the tree in the orchard, so that's a theme in these songs of the orchard. But anyway, here's a very short one as an example of the shorter songs here, because many of them are only 4, maybe 8 lines long. So here's number 44. Although you say within your heart, after her, it is my lot to embrace her, As Amun lives, I have come to you with my mantle on my shoulder. So let's see. Now we'll read the Song of the Harper, which already featured and which we read in its entirety in our video Quality of Life and the Harper, which is one of the first that I made for channel 514. Now, what's to be said about this? So, as I said before, this was a song closely associated with the great banquets of the nobles of the New Kingdom, and or even of earlier times, and so it's part of a long tradition, really, and no one knows exactly when this tradition began, but it's not unlikely that it began during the Middle Kingdom, although it could go back farther than that. But anyway, this version is from the New Kingdom, and so as we read this, let's remind ourselves that the New Kingdom is the time of the wonderful things of King Tut's tomb, so the time of the most lavish and expensive Egyptian burials that, in their way, were even greater than the burials of the pyramids of the Old Kingdom. And yet, the people buried in these tombs, they spent their best times, they had their good times, while listening to songs like this at their great big parties. And so let's pay attention to some of the things that are said in here that really confound or go strongly against the mortuary religion that is such a well-known feature of Egyptian society. So here we are, the Song of the Harper, the song which is in the chapel of King Intef, justified in front of the singer with the harp. Fortunate is this prince, for happy was his fate, and happy his ending. One generation passes away, and the next remains, ever since the time of those of old. The gods who existed before me rest now in their tombs, and the blessed nobles also are buried in their tombs. But as, for those builders of tombs, their places are no more, what has become of them? I have heard the words of Imhotep and Hardadef, whose maxims are repeated, intact, as proverbs. But what of their places? Their walls are in ruins, and their places are no more, as if they had never existed. There is no one who returns from beyond, that he may tell of their state, that he may tell of their lot, that he may set our hearts at ease until we make our journey to the place where they have gone. So rejoice your heart. Absence of care is good for you. Follow your heart as long as you live. Put myrrh on your head, dress yourself in fine linen, anoint yourself with the exquisite oils which are only for the gods. Let your pleasures increase, and let not your heart grow weary. Follow your heart and your happiness. Conduct your affairs on earth as your heart dictates, for that day of mourning will surely come for you. The weary-hearted does not hear their lamentations, and their weeping does not rescue a man's heart from the grave. And there's a refrain, enjoy pleasant times, and do not weary thereof. Behold, it is not given to any man to take his belongings with him. Behold, there is no one departed who will return again. So let's recount all the lines in here that fly in the face and really thoroughly explode everything in our popular imagination that we believe we know about ancient Egypt, or anyway. There is no one who returns from beyond, that he may tell of their state, that he may tell of their lot, that he may set our hearts at ease. So, all of that stuff about the beautiful West, we don't really know about it. So this may be all you get. So rejoice your heart. Absence of care is good for you. Have a good time. Do all this stuff. Follow your heart, etc., etc. It goes on for a while about that because that day of mourning will surely come for you, and their weeping does not rescue a man's heart from the grave. So this may be your only chance, and you may not have this happy afterlife in the beautiful West, or in any case, you can't know about it in this life. So, and finally, it is not given to any man to take his belongings with him. And think again about the grave goods, the wonderful things that sort of give us the impression that these were people who thought they really could take it with them. But behold, it is not given to any man to take his belongings with him. And this isn't just a fringe idea in ancient Egypt, this is a song that everyone knew, basically. This is a mainstream view. So we've given the pyramids and mummies their due, but I think it's worthwhile to also take a look at this flip side of Egyptian thought that you find strongly evidenced in the lyric poems. And so it has a sense, it has a way of exploding our one-sided view of what Egyptian society must have been like, although it doesn't literally explode the pyramids or anything like that, but that would be terrible. Who would want to do that? But in any case, I think it's worthwhile to take a look at these things because this way we can get a more well-rounded view. I think it's worthwhile to listen to what these people actually had to say for themselves. And so, anyway, I'm not able to express it very well right now, but that, I think, is good enough for this video. And so, we will just cut this off here, and we'll be back at it whenever we're back at it, and we'll make a couple more on Egyptian literature before we move on to Greece and Rome. So thanks for joining us for this. I think this is one of the conceptually more interesting videos in this series, or the ideas in it anyway are more interesting to me. I don't know how interesting this was to you, but there you have it. And if you want to know more for yourself, then it's probably not hard to do so online. This book, of course, that we're using, The Literature of Ancient Egypt, is easily available, and there's a lot to be found on sacredtexts.com, or I'm sure on various other websites. But in any case, thanks again, and have a great night and a great weekend, and we will be seeing